I was standing in my garage at 4 in the morning staring at a whiteboard covered in words I had written the night before. Business, family, training, self-discipline, finances, leadership. A web of arrows connected everything like I was trying to fight a war on 20 different fronts at once. And in that moment, I realized something I had never allowed myself to admit out loud. Even after a decade as a Navy SEAL, I was losing control of my own life. You'd think the battlefield was the place where chaos destroys you, but I can tell you right now, the real collapse happens quietly in your own mind when you're carrying too many goals, too many expectations, too many unfinished missions. That morning, I felt like I was drowning in them. And if you've ever felt the same, like your brain is constantly sprinting while your feet stay stuck in the same place, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is where most people fall apart, not because they're weak, not because they lack ambition, but because ambition, when spread across too many directions, becomes a silent enemy. And the worst part? Most people never even see it coming. They wake up every day with 8 different goals running in the background, and they can't understand why progress feels like quicksand. According to a Harvard-focused study on cognitive overload, the human brain becomes significantly less effective the moment it tries to maintain more than one primary objective. It's like trying to push a boulder uphill while juggling 3 grenades. Something will drop, something will explode, and eventually something inside you will give out. That was my wake-up call, right there, alone, in that cold garage, staring at a board full of directions that didn't actually point anywhere. And for the first time since leaving the teams, I felt real fear, not battlefield fear. This was deeper. It was the fear of wasting my potential, the fear of becoming average, the fear of looking back in 10 years and realizing I'd been busy but never effective. But that moment didn't break me. It did something much more important. It forced me to remember a lesson I learned in the mud, freezing, exhausted, and one failure away from ringing the bell. Back in Bud S, one of my instructors told me something I didn't understand at the time. He said, "You're failing because you're trying to survive the whole week. You need one objective, one moment, one mission, nothing else." I didn't realize it then, but that was the seed. And in my garage years later, it finally hit me. There is one rule, one single rule that turns a chaotic life into an unstoppable one. A rule so simple, it almost feels like a trick. A rule I've used in combat, in business, and now with every person I mentor. I won't reveal it yet, not fully, but I'll tell you this. Once you understand it, you will never approach your goals the same way again, because the truth is, your life doesn't collapse from a lack of effort. It collapses from a lack of clarity, and clarity begins the moment you stop trying to win 10 battles at once. There is a way out of the chaos, a way to rebuild your focus, your direction, your strength, and it starts with a single rule, the one goal rule. This changes everything, and you're about to see why. Most people don't realize how dangerous it is to live with too many goals pulling at them from every direction. I've seen men break in the field under enemy fire, but I've seen far more people break quietly under the weight of their own ambition. It's the kind of collapse that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like someone constantly starting, constantly planning, constantly working on it, yet getting nowhere. And if I'm being honest, that's exactly where I found myself after leaving the teams. I wasn't running out of discipline, I was running out of bandwidth. Modern life has created a new kind of battlefield, one where the enemy isn't a bullet or a blast, it's fragmentation. Every goal you carry, every unfinished task, every idea you keep in your head without closure becomes an open loop. One open loop is manageable. 10 are distracting, but 20 or 30, that's when your mind becomes a house full of unlocked doors, each one leaking a little bit of energy. That's when progress dies. Japanese performance coaches have a name for this cognitive leak, and it translates roughly to mental hemorrhaging. It's slow, subtle, and destructive. You don't notice it until you're standing in the middle of your life wondering why you're tired before the day even begins. Here's the truth most people never hear. It's not your goals that are killing your progress. It's the friction between them. Imagine trying to sprint north and south at the same time. That's what your mind experiences when you're chasing fitness, finances, relationships, career, personal growth all at once. And the worst part, each goal feels important. That's how this trap works. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels necessary. Everything feels like it should have been done yesterday. But when everything is urgent, nothing becomes effective. So how do you fix it? You strip the noise away, you stop trying to balance your life, and instead focus on aligning it behind one driving mission. Balance is a myth. Alignment is the solution. When you commit fully to a single objective, every other part of your life starts to organize around it. Your decisions become clearer, your energy goes further, your confidence builds instead of drains. This is where people begin to regain hope because they finally see that discipline isn't the problem. They've just been spreading their discipline across too many fronts. But even when people try to simplify, they make a predictable mistake. They reduce the number of goals, but they don't eliminate competing priorities. They keep three or two, or they pick one goal but attach 10 sub goals to it, turning one clean mission into a messy cluster of expectations. And once again, the brain starts to leak attention, energy, and drive. I've watched countless men and women fall back into chaos because they refuse to choose with full commitment. A half committed mission is more dangerous than no mission at all. During Bud S, we had a saying, if you chase two rabbits, you lose both. My instructors had a way of turning that into a lesson you never forgot. When they saw a candidate try to think ahead, thinking about Wednesday's evolution during Monday's suffering, they crushed him with extra chaos until his only choice was to narrow his focus. One moment, one action, one objective. That's the SEAL reframing trick that saved me. You don't ask yourself, what are all the things I need to do today? You ask, what is the one thing that makes the rest easier or irrelevant? The moment you frame your life this way, clarity snaps into place. Fear dissolves, progress accelerates, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like your feet are moving in the same direction as your mind. That's the power of eliminating multitask ambition. And this is where your life starts to shift, because once you reclaim your clarity, everything else begins to fall in line. I can still feel the sting of the salt water in my eyes and the weight of the sand grinding into my uniform. It was week 3 of Bud S, somewhere around 2 in the morning, and I was right on the edge of breaking. The Pacific was black and violent, slamming against the shoreline like it had something personal against us. My team and I had just come out of a brutally cold surf torture session, and every muscle in my body was trembling. My teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack. But the physical pain wasn't what pushed me toward failure. I could handle pain. What nearly took me out was something far more dangerous. My mind was trying to carry too many objectives at once. I was thinking about keeping my feet moving, staying in formation, avoiding mistakes, keeping my breath steady, not letting my team down, not letting myself down, finishing the evolution, surviving the night, surviving the week, surviving the whole damn program. I wasn't inside the moment anymore. I was everywhere else, and that's where you die in BUD/S. Not from cold or exhaustion, from fragmentation. We were ordered to pick up the IBS boat and hoist it over our heads. I could barely lift my arms, but I forced the boat up anyway. The instructor paced in front of us like a shark looking for someone bleeding mentally, and he found me. My eyes must have revealed everything. Fear, future tripping, doubt. I was thinking about how many hours were left, not the second I was standing in, and he saw it instantly. John, he barked, you're carrying too much. You're trying to finish the whole program tonight. That's how you fail. I tried to shake it off, but the boat wobbled, and my teammates had to stabilize it. That was a sin in Bud S. The instructor stepped closer until I could feel his breath in the cold night air. You know why guys quit? He said. It's not the cold. It's not the pain. It's because their mind fractures into 1,000 pieces. They try to complete tomorrow, next week, hell week all at once. That's suicide. I locked eyes with him because I knew he was right. My body was in the moment, but my mind was everywhere else. I could feel panic rising, the kind that hits deep in your chest and makes everything seem impossible. My legs felt like they were made of fire and concrete. The thought crossed my mind, ring the bell, end the suffering, get warm, go home. And the moment that thought took shape, fear washed over me harder than the waves we had just crawled out of. Military psychologists studying special operations candidates found that failure spikes the moment the mind tries to run multiple timelines at once. The instructor said, his voice suddenly calm. You want to survive Bud S? One objective, one focus, right now, nothing else. Then he said something that would become the foundation of my entire life, long after the teams, long after the battlefield. Make your world small. It hit me like a punch. Make your world small, not the whole night, not the whole week, not the whole program, this moment, this breath, this lift, this step. I tightened my grip and shifted everything I had into lifting that boat, not the next minute, not the next hour, just this one objective. And for the first time that night, something changed. The fear didn't disappear, but it stopped multiplying. My body felt the same pain, but my mind wasn't drowning anymore. Hope came quietly like a spark. One small objective, completed with total commitment, created a tiny victory, and that victory carried me to the next one and the next until the night was behind us. That was the moment the one goal rule was born. It wasn't some motivational slogan. It was a survival mechanism forged in the darkest, coldest hours of my life. And years later, when I felt my civilian world collapsing under the weight of too many goals, I remembered that night. I remembered that single rule that kept me from ringing the bell. Make your world small. One mission, one focus. That's how you become unstoppable. The one goal rule is brutally simple. At any given time, you are only allowed to have one primary mission, not three priorities, not five targets, not a cluster of important things you're juggling. One mission that drives your decisions, your energy, and your daily actions. That's it. Everything else becomes secondary noise. And people hate hearing that because they want to believe they can be effective while chasing 10 different outcomes at once. I used to believe that too, until life proved me wrong more times than I want to admit. When I finally committed to the one goal rule, my entire system, mental, emotional, physical, started operating the way it was designed to. There's a neurological reason for this. Neuroscience labs in Tel Aviv discovered a phenomenon called focus stacking, where the brain's prefrontal cortex becomes exponentially more efficient when all cognitive pathways point toward a single outcome. When you choose one mission, the brain stops leaking energy into competing tasks. Decision-making becomes faster, stress drops, discipline becomes easier because it isn't being pulled apart by conflicting commands. In the teams, we called it vector alignment. In neuroscience, it's the elimination of cognitive interference. Whatever the label, the result is the same. When your mission is singular, your power multiplies. But here's the problem. When civilians try to apply this rule, they almost always misuse it. They say, okay, I'll choose one goal, but then they pick something vague like improve my life, get healthier, or start a business. That isn't a mission, that's a fog bank. A mission has parameters, clarity, direction, and a finish line. Most people don't choose missions. They choose moods, and moods don't drive action. They deteriorate into guilt, procrastination, and self-judgment. The second mistake is choosing conflicting goals and calling it simplicity. Someone says their one goal is to get in peak physical condition, yet they also want to work longer hours, sleep less, and push their career harder. Those goals fight each other. You can't maximize performance while minimizing recovery. You can't build endurance while living on stress and adrenaline. The minute your mission contains internal contradictions, momentum dies, fear creeps in. You feel stuck, not because you're incapable, but because your goals are pulling your mind in opposite directions. The one goal rule only works when the mission is clean, defined, and unchallenged by competing priorities. That's where my internal mission filter comes in, a tool I created years after BUD/S to stop myself from pretending that messy goals were clear ones. Whenever I choose a mission, I run it through 4 questions. First, does this goal remove friction from my life or add to it? Second, if I completed this goal, would it simplify the next 6 months or complicate them? Third, is this goal achievable with consistent daily action, or does it depend on luck, motivation, or other people? Fourth, if I had to stake the next 90 days of my life on one outcome, would this be the one worth fighting for? If the mission fails even one question, it's not a mission, it's a distraction wearing a disguise. Most people never test their goals this way, and that's why they stay stuck. They pick goals that sound good, not goals that create momentum. They pick outcomes that impress others, not missions that strengthen their internal world. And when their energy collapses, they blame themselves instead of the broken structure they were using. The fear we don't talk about is the fear of choosing wrong, the fear of committing to something and realizing months later it was the wrong target. But here's the hope. When you run your goals through the mission filter, the wrong ones reveal themselves immediately. You don't waste months chasing the impossible. You don't fragment your mind across conflicting desires. You don't drown under the weight of too many directions. You choose one mission, you align your entire life behind it, and for the first time, progress stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like movement. That's the power of the one goal rule. It's not restrictive, it's liberating. It makes your world small enough to win. And once you learn how to choose the right mission, everything else begins to fall into place. When people hear me talk about the one goal rule, they usually think it's just another motivational idea. But the truth is, once you commit to one mission at a time, your entire life begins to reorganize itself around that single point of focus. I've watched careers transform, marriages repair, bodies rebuild, and bank accounts stabilize, all from choosing one clear objective and refusing to let anything compete with it. Momentum doesn't come from doing more. It comes from removing the friction that keeps you stuck in place. When you stop scattering your energy across 10 different goals, something powerful happens. Every step forward amplifies the next one. That's why single focus objectives create what I call unstoppable life momentum. They turn effort into acceleration instead of exhaustion. When I mentor people, I always start by stripping their life down to one mission, and the shift is immediate. A guy trying to fix his finances suddenly stops bleeding money because his decisions align with the mission. A woman trying to rebuild her health finally stays consistent because she no longer feels pulled between diet plans, workout programs, and conflicting advice. Even relationships change. When someone's mission becomes become a present partner, they stop drifting through conversations, stop half listening, stop being physically there, but mentally gone. Alignment changes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. That's how one mission spreads into every part of your life. You don't force momentum, you create the conditions that make momentum inevitable. Applying this to daily life is simpler than people think. Your mission becomes the lens through which every decision is made. If your mission is physical rebuild, then your morning isn't a chaotic question of, should I train today? The mission answers that for you. If your mission is career advancement, the mission decides whether you stay late, study, network, or eliminate distractions. You're no longer negotiating with yourself every day. You're executing. And execution becomes easier because there's only one direction to move in. But here's the part most people underestimate. Clarity doesn't stay stable on its own. Life is loud. People demand your attention. Emergencies pop up. Old habits creep back in. This is the trap that destroys momentum. When life gets busy, people start to drift. Their mission becomes blurry. Decisions become reactive instead of intentional. And before they realize it, they're back to juggling 5 mini goals instead of committing to one. I've seen this play out hundreds of times. Someone starts strong, gains traction, feels progress for the first time in years, and then suddenly they're overwhelmed again because they allowed a dozen small obligations to pull them out of alignment. The danger isn't the distraction itself. The danger is not noticing the drift. Losing clarity is like a leak in the hull of a boat. It doesn't sink you instantly. It sinks you slowly, quietly, while you're telling yourself you're still doing fine. That's why I teach every student one habit, one ritual that prevents the collapse before it begins. Researchers at Stanford observed that micro commitments outperform resolutions by 400%. And that became the backbone of what I call my nightly recalibration ritual. It takes 10 minutes, but it saves you months of wasted effort. Every night, no matter how tired I am, no matter how stressful the day was, I sit down with a notebook and ask myself 3 simple questions. Did my actions today move forward on my mission? Where did I drift? And what is the single most important action I must take tomorrow to stay aligned? That's it. No overthinking, no journaling marathons, no motivational speeches, just clarity restored every night. The power of that ritual is that it resets your internal compass. It catches the drift before it becomes a spiral. It reminds your brain that tomorrow isn't a battlefield of options, it's a continuation of one mission. Hope comes from this simplicity. You don't need a perfect day. You don't need endless time. You just need to realign daily with ruthless honesty. This is why people who adopt the one goal rule move faster than those who work harder. They aren't battling chaos. They aren't wasting energy. They aren't fighting multiple fronts. Their world becomes small enough to win consistently, and momentum builds from that consistency. That's how careers explode, bodies transform, and relationships heal. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's alignment, protected every night, renewed every morning, and driven by one mission at a time. If there's one thing I've learned, one truth that cuts through every excuse, every distraction, every chaotic chapter of a person's life, it's this. Transformation begins the moment you choose a mission, not a wish list, not a hope, not a vague intention, a mission, the kind of goal that demands your respect because it has the power to alter the direction of your life. And right now, if you're listening to this, I want you to make a decision that most people avoid their entire lives. I want you to choose the one goal that will define your next 90 days. This is where everything either changes or stays exactly the same. Because if you don't choose, your life will continue to run in circles. The same patterns, the same habits, the same overwhelm. Chaos doesn't go away by itself, it waits. It follows you from room to room. It drains your energy quietly each day until you start to believe you're the problem, but you're not the problem. Your lack of direction is, and direction begins with a decision. Performance strategists working with elite athletes found that a single 90-day focus window produces exponential growth. Not linear, not incremental, exponential. Why 90 days? Because it's short enough that your brain can see the finish line, but long enough to completely rewire your identity. 90 days is where discipline becomes instinct, where habits stick, where the new version of you stops being theory and starts being real. but it requires something most people aren't willing to do, committing to one objective and letting every other desire wait. Before you choose your mission, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. If there were one change, just one, that would make the rest of your life easier or more powerful, what would it be? What keeps you awake at night because you know you've avoided it for too long? What goal scares you because deep down you know it would transform you? What would make the next 3 months the most meaningful season you've lived in years? These questions matter because your mission has to come from truth, not ego. When you strip away everything else, only one objective will stand tall enough to deserve your energy. Maybe it's rebuilding your body. Maybe it's mastering your finances. Maybe it's healing your marriage, doubling your income, or launching the business you keep pretending you're not ready for. Whatever it is, choose it with full commitment, not half-heartedly, not with hesitation, not with backup plans. Because when you choose the right mission, your world begins to reorganize around it. Distractions lose their power, decisions become easier, your days acquire structure, your energy flows in one direction instead of bleeding into 1,000 tiny obligations. That's the beginning of real momentum. But here's the fear most people never admit. Choosing means giving up the comfort of indecision. As long as you don't commit, you never have to confront the possibility of failure. You can keep telling yourself you're preparing or planning or waiting for the right moment. But all that does is keep you locked in the same orbit. If you don't choose a mission, nothing changes. Not in 90 days, not in 900 days, not in 9 years. You stay busy, you stay tired, you stay frustrated, and life stays exactly where it is right now. The hope is this: one mission can break the cycle instantly. One goal, fully embraced, can create clarity where there was confusion, strength where there was hesitation, direction where there was drift. When you choose your mission, your life doesn't just improve, it transforms. The shift isn't subtle, it's seismic. It's the difference between wandering and advancing, between wishing and executing, between surviving and becoming unstoppable. This changes everything, not because the goal itself is magical, but because the commitment is. So take a breath, slow down, look at your life with ruthless honesty, and choose. Choose the mission that will define the next 90 days of your life. Write it down, speak it out loud, let it hit your chest with weight and meaning. This is your objective now. This is where your energy goes. This is where your discipline lives. One mission, one focus, 90 days. And when you look back, you won't even recognize the person you were before you chose.